Can't remember anything.
Do you recall yourself going to bed?
Faintly.
Katherine Knight is an Australian murderer and the first woman in the country's history to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was convicted for the murder of her partner in February 2000. Katherine stabbed the gentleman to death, skinned him, and cooked his head and parts of his body with the intention of feeding them to his children. Welcome to How to Deal. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the page, and ask your friends to check us out as well, if they're just as much as a true crime junkie like yourself. Now let's begin. Katherine Knight was born October 24, 1955 in South Wales, Australia. Raised in an unconventional and dysfunctional family, her mother had 4 sons before starting an adulterous relationship with a new lover. She had 4 more kids with a new guy, one of which was a set of twins. One of those twins was Katherine Knight. Katherine's father was a violent alcoholic who would beat her mother up to 10 times in a single day. Her father began to sexually assault her by the age of 11, and she claimed to have been sexually assaulted frequently by several members of her family. Later on throughout her youth, Katherine complained to her mother that her boyfriend at the time wanted to partake in some sex acts with her that she didn't want to. Her mother told her to just put up with it and stop complaining. Her favorite relative, apart from her twin sister, was her uncle Oscar, a world champion horseman. She was devastated and crushed when he committed suicide in 1969. She claims that his ghost still visits her from time to time. She dropped out of school by the age of 15 without barely learning how to read or write. She worked as a cutter in a clothing factory for 12 months before finding her dream job. She started working at a local slaughterhouse cutting up organ meats. Quickly working her way up the ranks, she was promoted to boning, removing bones from carcasses, and was given her own set of butcher's knives. She treasured these knives, even hanging them over her bed, being close by if she ever needed them. Katherine first met her co-worker David Kellett in 1973. He was a heavy drinker, using the booze to get over 2 traumatic incidents from a previous railway job. If David got into a fight, Katherine would step in and defend him with her fists. She was well known for physically threatening anyone who upsets her. A year later, they got married, with Katherine's mom giving David some advice. "You better watch this one or she'll kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're f***ed. Don't even think of cheating on her, she'll kill you." Again, this is her own mother warning the newlywed groom. On said wedding night, Katherine attempted to strangle David in his sleep. She later explained that it was because he fell asleep after only having smashed 3 times. This girl had a serious sex drive. Oh, the marriage proved to be tumultuous and violent. On one occasion, a pregnant Katherine burned all of David's shoes and clothes and hit him in the back of the head with a frying pan. All this because he came home late from a darts competition in which he reached the finals. Out of fear, David ran away before collapsing in front of a neighbor's house. He was treated for a severely fractured skull. Police couldn't press charges on her because, after ingratiating David, he dropped all the charges. In May 1976, David left Katherine for another woman, apparently unable to cope with the abuse. The next day, Katherine was seen violently pushing her baby carriage from side to side in the street and was also seen shaking the baby. She was admitted to the hospital where she was diagnosed with postpartum depression and spent several weeks recovering. Shortly after being released, she placed her baby on the railway tracks. She then stole an axe, went into town, and threatened to kill several people. A homeless man happened to be passing by when he rescued the baby minutes before the train passed by. Katherine was arrested again and taken back to the hospital. A few days later, she slashed the face of a woman with one of the knives and demanded she drive her to Queensland to find her estranged husband. Luckily, the woman escaped at a service station and called the police. By the time they arrived, Katherine had taken a young boy hostage. She was disarmed when police attacked her with brooms and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Katherine told the nurses that she had intended to kill the mechanic at the station because he repaired David's car, which had allowed him to leave, and then kill both her husband and his mother when she arrived in Queensland. When police informed David of the incident, he left his girlfriend and moved back to Aberdeen with his mother to support Katherine. Katherine was released in August 1976. In 1984, she left David. 2 years later, in 1986, Katherine met another gentleman who also goes by the name David Saunders. Although they was dating, he kept and slept in his own apartment, which drove Katherine ridiculously crazy. In May 1987, she cut the throat of his puppy in front of him just to set an example of what she would do to him if she ever caught him cheating. Then render him unconscious after hitting him over the head with a frying pan. Following another argument they was having, Katherine hit Saunders in the face with an iron before stabbing him in the abdomen with a pair of scissors. Seriously, someone should have stopped her long before the ultimate arrest. Clearly, this relationship ain't work either, so let's keep it going. In 1991, she became pregnant by another co-worker named John Chillington. Their relationship only lasted 3 years before she left him for a man she had been having an affair for quite some time, John Price. John Price, himself, was a father of 3 children and recently divorced. Everyone who knew him says he was a terrific bloke. John was well aware of Katherine's violent past as she moved into his place in 1995. His children loved her, and apart from the violent arguments, life was a bunch of roses at first. In 1998, Katherine and John clashed when he declined to marry her. In retaliation, she recorded items she claimed he had taken from work and forwarded the footage to his boss. Price lost the job he had maintained for 17 years. On that very day, he kicked her out and she returned to her own home, while news of her actions circulated throughout the town. A few months later, John restarted the relationship, refusing to let her move in though. The fighting became more frequent. He should have just stood away. In February of 2000, a barrage of attacks on John reached a climax when Katherine plunged a knife into his chest. On February 28, he filed for a restraining order on his aggressor. Same day, he told his co-worker that if he didn't come to work the next day, it would be because Katherine had murdered him. They pleaded with him not to return to his home, but he had to in regards to concerns over his children. Although Katherine wasn't there, she sent the children away for a sleepover. John spent the evening with his neighbors before going to bed at 11 p.m. She later arrived at John's house, took a shower, woke him up in some new black lingerie she had purchased, had sex, then went to sleep. At 6 a.m. the next day, a neighbor became concerned that John's car was still in the driveway, and when he did not arrive at work, his employer sent a worker to see what was wrong. Both the neighbor and the worker tried knocking on John's bedroom window to wake him, but they alerted police after noticing blood on the front door. Breaking down the back door, police found John's body, with Katherine comatose from taking a large number of pills. She had stabbed John with a butcher's knife while he was sleeping. According to the blood evidence, he awoke and tried to turn the light on before attempting to escape while Knight chased him through the house. He bled to death after being stabbed at least 37 times to both the front and the back of his body. Hours after John had died, Katherine skinned him and hung the skin from a meat hook in the room.
I realised then it was a human pelt. It was the skin minus the head.
She then cut off his head and cooked part of his body, serving up the meat with baked potatoes, carrots, pumpkin, and other vegetables at the table, along with notes beside each plate, each having the name of one of John's children on it. She was preparing to serve his body parts to his children. A fourth meal was thrown on the back lawn for unknown reasons. It is speculated that Katherine had attempted to eat it but could not, and tossed the plate. John's head was found in a pot with vegetables. It was still cooking, simmering at a low heat. The body was arranged with the left arm draped over an empty bottle and his legs crossed. Katherine had left a handwritten note on top of a photograph of John. It was blood-stained and covered with small pieces of flesh. The letter spoke of obscenities and claims of rape. On November 8, 2001, the judge on the case pointed out that the nature of the crime and the lack of Katherine's remorse required a severe penalty. He sentenced her to life in prison with no parole and ordered that her papers will be stamped definitely never to be released. The first time that this has been imposed on a woman in Australian history. By July 2017, it has been reported that Katherine Knight had taken a leadership role mediating disputes among prisoners at Silver Waters Women Correctional Center. She had no record of violence in prison, receiving 0 extra charges added to her sentence. By 2024, she is still alive, at the humble age of 68.